Thanks for the opportunity of introducing you to my book, Secrets of Owning Your Swing, The Power of 3 Golf Approach. I believe every golfer would truly love to own his or her swing. And to do that, we need to understand how our body mechanics are constructed. Secrets of Owning Your Swing shows you that there's 12 biomechanical features that all golf swings possess. Each feature has 3 options, and only one of those options fits you. Identify and incorporate the 12 feature options that fit your body mechanics, and you'll be able to own your golf swing. Today we're going to cover 4 of those features. They are your swing anchor, your torque system, your clearing action, and your axis of symmetry. Keep in mind as we cover these features and their options that everything happens in a matter of degrees. What that means is that some of you are going to find out that your biomechanics are aligned in between the standard options that I'm going to show in the pictures today. That's okay. If you are interested in learning more about how this system works, you can always read the book and it will explain these features in more detail. The swing anchor feature has to do with your body's balance point and learning to pivot around that balance point. Some of you will pivot better with a weight distribution that favors your front foot. Others of you will pivot better with a weight distribution that favors your rear foot. And some of you will pivot better while favoring a 50-50 weight distribution. Those of you that favor your rear foot will find that you pivot better around your right hip joint. At address and during the swing, your posture will look like it's leaning away from the target. Those of you that rotate better with your weight favoring your front foot will find that at address and during the swing, your posture will look like it's leaning towards the target. And those of you that are more symmetrically balanced will have more of a 50-50 weight distribution, and your posture will look more centered as you rotate back and through. In this swing sequence, we can see an example of a rear anchor pivot action. I've preloaded weight onto my right foot, and I've got my balance into my right hip joint. During the backswing, I go ahead and I rotate around that right hip joint. I transition with the balance point in my right hip joint, and the weight's moving inside the right foot. During delivery, I can maintain that balance all the way through my full extension. Once I've achieved the full extension, I go ahead and release all my postural angles up to a full finish. Conventional teaching has focused on the rear anchor technique over the past few decades, and there have been a variety of great players that have employed it. For example, Tom Kite was using it when he won the U.S. Open in 1992. This swing sequence is an example of a center anchor pivot. As you can see, I set up more 50-50 and I rotate it in a more symmetrical manner as I pivot to the top of the backswing. During the transition, it returns in a symmetrical manner, and it's delivered all the way through the full extension, maintaining that symmetry. Once the full extension is achieved, all postural angles are released up to a full finish. There have been many successful center anchor professionals, including players like Ernie Els and Tom Watson. In this sequence, I'm demonstrating the front anchor pivot action. Notice how I set up favoring my front foot, and my posture looks like it's leaning towards the target throughout the backswing. I transition in that posture as well. As I deliver the swing through my full extension, I maintain that front anchor alignment. Once the full extension is achieved, all postural angles are released up to a full finish. If you've ever tried or viewed the stack and tilt swing, you may recognize it as one of the variety of front anchor models available. Keep in mind, there are a lot of other front anchor models available, and there have been a lot of great front anchor golfers over the years. For example, Ben Hogan and Hale Irwin were both front anchor golfers that used 2 different techniques. And David Duval used what I call a front anchor swing throw model when he was the #1 player in the world. The next feature I want to talk about is what I call your torque system. There's 3 basic options for developing torque. I call them the lower body option, the full body option, and the upper body option. Lower torque golfers tend to lack flexibility between their hips and their shoulders. Upper torque golfers have a lot of flexibility between their hips and shoulders and the strength to apply that technique. And full torque golfers tend to have an average amount of flexibility between their hips and their shoulders. Lower torque golfers tend to rotate their hips, their torso, and their chest all as one unit. They tend to have short torsos or inflexible torsos. Therefore, they feel like they can generate more torque by grounding their feet and rotating their hips and developing that torque in their lower body, or more specifically, throughout their legs. Full torque golfers also ground their feet and rotate their hips freely to develop torque in the legs. However, they also have the flexibility and the strength in the upper body to get a little bit more torque developed between their hips and their shoulders. Therefore, these golfers feel like they're developing torque from the ground up all the way through their shoulders. Upper torque golfers tend to be extremely flexible between their hips and their shoulders. They also have a lot of core strength. These golfers tend to resist their hip turn as much as they can while trying to turn their shoulders as much as they can. This has been the conventional view of torque in the golf swing over the past 20 or 30 years. Even so, a lot of forward-thinking instructors have found that a lot of their students are unable to develop that type of torque, and that many of them can only develop the lower body type of torque. Also, we've seen that a lot of teachers have been starting to focus on rotating the right hip deeper in the backswing, and as they rotate that right hip deeper, it poises the golfer to be able to develop more of a full body type of torque. The next feature I want to talk about is your clearing action. As with all other features, it has three options as well. There's the front hip clear action, the tailbone clear action, and the rear hip clear action. The basic concept of clearing is that of creating room for your arms, hands, and club to slot during the downswing. However, I like to think of it as restoring your postural angles during the transition back to where they were at address. We have to restore those angles because during the backswing the rear end comes off the wall. Therefore, during the transition, we got to rotate in such a way that we get the rear end back to its initial starting line. This sequence of pictures shows the front hip clear action. From the top of the backswing, we want to get the feeling of rotating the front glute back on the wall during the transition. If it's done properly, that will clear enough room for the arms, hands, and clubs to slot during the downswing. The next option is the tailbone clear option. With this option, once you get to the top of the backswing, you want to focus on transitioning by pushing your tailbone straight back on the wall. If you do so, it will clear enough room for your arms, hands, and club to slot properly in the downswing. The last option is the rear hip clear option. In this feature, you want to make sure once you get to the top of the backswing that you get the right glute pinned on the wall and it stays there as your hips turn. As the hips turn, you might feel like the right hip slides a little bit towards the target. That's okay. If you do it correctly, you're going to find, once again, that you've cleared a lot of room for your arms, hands, and club to slot in the downswing. One last note, for many of you, your clearing action will happen naturally. For others, you've already developed bad habits, and you're going to have to work hard on getting the clearing action that fits your body mechanics working efficiently once again. Our last feature today is your axis of symmetry. Your axis of symmetry has to do with how your upper body rotates in the golf swing, and that has a lot to do with your spinal action. Just like with all the other features, there's three options. We've got a spine line axis of symmetry, we have a center line axis of symmetry, and we have a sternum line axis of symmetry. The spine line axis of symmetry has been the traditional view of rotating in posture around your spine as you coil to the top of the backswing. As we can see in these pictures, I'm demonstrating rotating around that spine line as I coil to the top of the backswing. In the center line option, you're going to notice my sternum rotates rearward as my spine rotates towards the target. That happens because as we rotate our shoulders to the top of the backswing, our spine actually experiences some torque. In the sternum line axis of symmetry option, the upper spine torques even more towards the target, giving us the appearance of rotating around our sternum as we rotate to the top. Golfers that employ this option correctly are often accused of having a reverse pivot. However, if it fits your biomechanics, you can be sure that it's a valid option. If you recall earlier, I mentioned that everything happens in a manner of degrees. What that means is that for some of you, your spine will appear to torque away from the target, and for some of you, it will appear to torque towards the target. And for some of you, you'll feel like your sternum rotates away and your spine towards the target to equal degrees. It's simply a matter of degrees. Whatever fits your biomechanics is what you need to employ. Lastly, I want to mention that all the options we discussed today have been employed by great golfers throughout history. I'm sure if you look close enough, you're going to find these options being used by the great players today. If you're interested in studying these topics in more detail, you can visit my website, www.newhorizonsgolf.com, and there you'll be able to find a link to purchase this book from the Author House online bookstore.